Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Learn to Love podcast, your guide to everything love, sex, intimacy, and relationships. Each week, your host, Zach Beach, interviews new experts on love, including couples therapists, relationship coaches, sex educators, and best-selling authors. Learn the best tips and cutting-edge wisdom to better love yourself, others, and the world. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Learn to Love podcast, everyone. I am your host, Zach Beach, and I'm here with the incredible relationship coach, author, and fellow podcast host, Jennifer Hurvitz. Hello, Jennifer, and welcome to the show.
Well, hello. How are you, honey? How's it going?
I'm so good. I'm so glad we can make this interview happen. We had the first one scheduled many months ago, almost
I
over a
know.
year. So I'm
I'm
so
so
glad we
sorry,
can make
Zach.
this happen. No worries.
Me
I
too.
know. We'll get into the challenges of, single
Oh,
motherhood and different things like that. Because today we're going to be talking about staying married or getting happily divorced. But
oh,
before we get into that, for those that don't know, Jennifer is known for her no-nonsense approach to all things relationships and is proud to say she's made quite a career out of her pretty disastrous circumstances, her own divorce. She is a relationship expert, dating coach, best-selling author, and host of the award-winning Doing Relationships Right podcast. Through her books and weekly podcasts, Jennifer helps people understand what a happy relationship can look like and how to dip their toes back into the dating world post-divorce. Jen has been featured on OprahMagazine.com, where her book, Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, A Divorce Coach's Guide to Staying Married, was chosen as one of the best books to read with your partner for a healthy relationship. So, Jennifer, I usually begin by asking my guests how they're doing, right? But I had to check in first because you say you are happily divorced and seem
I
to be
am.
really enjoying your life right now. But in your book, you say that being divorced is actually lonely and pretty miserable. So
Yeah.
I have to ask,
It's taken
which
8 years, Zach. It's taken 8 years.
which one is it? How are you actually doing?
Oh, I'm doing, you know what? Now, 8 years later, actually, has it been 8? It's been 8 years. Yeah. I mean, it's people ask me, like, are you happily divorced? Are you happy to be divorced? Like, what's the deal, Jen? Right. So I tell people, I don't even know where to start. I've got so much to say. I tell people, divorce sucks. It absolutely sucks. People are like, oh, it's great. It's the best thing. Okay. People that say it's great and it's the best thing that ever happened, they're out of their divorce for a couple of years. That's been 3 or 4 years. The
Mhm,
process of getting divorced absolutely sucks. It's awful. It's like
mm,
it's literally like going through, it's like a death, like losing someone. It's like, loss of someone you love and
mhm,
the life that you thought you were going to have. Okay. So, now I'm not an advocate for, staying in an emotionally abusive or physically abusive relationship. I'm absolutely not. The caveat here is get out if you are in an emotionally abusive or physically abusive relationship. But with that said, here's where your listeners are like, she's crazy. I absolutely believe if you can work on your marriage and there's a glimmer of hope in your relationship, that you need to work on it before you take that leap, because the grass ain't greener. It
mm,
just isn't. And I think that if I knew back then what I know now as a coach and all the work I've done, I probably would have stayed married.
mm.
The crowd goes wild. Oh my God, But I mean, it's hard. It's really hard. It is not what I thought it was going to be.
Mm.
No one told me. I didn't have a crystal ball. I didn't have any expectations. I thought, oh, I'll be fine. It's going to be great. Now the kids are resilient. Bullshit. Am I allowed to swear? Oops.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. It's really, really hard. So am I happily divorced? Sure. Am I in a happy divorce? Absolutely. My husband, I call my ex-husband my husband. My
Mhm,
husband and I are best friends. I have
mm,
the best of the worst divorce you'll ever see. It's amicable. Was it always? No. Did we work at it? Yes, because all relationships take work.
mm,
All relationships take work. Friendships, mother-child, marriage, relationships, they all take work. So our divorce took work. And now we are happily divorced in a happy divorce. And that's it. So
mm.
I'm also in a 5-year relationship with my boyfriend. So
Okay.
he's also friends with my husband.
Husband. Okay.
Yeah.
So that sounds pretty
Yeah.
good, but I wouldn't mind getting into the challenges around getting divorced, right? That's one
Let's do
piece.
it.
And then there's the challenge around being divorced. So like after you've gone through the process.
Oh
So what
God,
were some of the like unforeseen challenges that you found
let me tell you.
around the process of getting divorced? Because when you mentioned it's a loss of someone that you love, I was thinking, well, most people, don't love them anymore, or
Right.
like I'm going to be
Good
much
point.
better if we weren't together, because you're not the
Well, of course.
person that I want to be with.
Right. It's the loss of the life that you thought you were going to have. Right.
Mm,
So when you get married and you go to the altar or the chuppah and you walk up there, you don't ever think, I'm going to get divorced. You think white picket fence. You think beautiful, whatever, my kids, my family. What? So no one asks for, you don't ever think you're going to get divorced. Like, oh, 5 years from now, I know I'm going to, you don't, right? Your expectations are such that you're going to stay married the rest of your life. At least you hope that when you get married.
mhm,
So even if you want the divorce, which both me and my husband, we did, we both came to the conclusion that the divorce was best for us in our situation. We chose to do it. We looked at each other and said, we're going to do this right, which is where my podcast came from. My first podcast was doing divorce right.
mm,
Even though we wanted it, it was devastating because
mhm,
we looked at our two kids who didn't ask for this. They didn't come in our room one day and say, hey, mom and dad, guess what? At 9 and 11 years old, we think you guys should get a divorce because this really sucks. They didn't ask for it, right? So it was the loss of, the life that we thought we were going to have.
mm,
And I think whether you ask for it, you want it, you're cheated on, you weren't cheated on, it doesn't matter. It's just that tiny, like the unraveling of the bow, the box of the bow and the pictures and you know what I mean?
mhm,
And it's devastating. It was devastating. It is emotionally, and everyone says, you don't know what you don't know.
mhm,
You really don't know what you don't know. And
mhm,
people around you who try to support you, unless you've gone through a divorce, you have no idea.
mm,
Same as a death. Unless you've lost someone close to you, you have no idea what it's like to lose someone close to you. You can sympathize with someone, but you cannot empathize because you don't know what it's like to be in that person's shoes. So my parents, my family, my friends who were like, oh my God, you'll be fine. You'll get back out there. Oh my God, he was a loser anyway. Or he was, really? You have no idea what it feels
mm.
like. It's hard. Just the whole thing. What a
You
mess.
know, I'm thinking about a couple people that we've had on the podcast before. One was a divorce lawyer who, of course, was like, absolutely get your prenuptial agreement. It's a
I
wonderful
agree.
opportunity to like talk about,
I
your
agree.
assets, your finances, et cetera, et cetera. But we had another guest who literally like works in hospice care.
Mm,
And her mother passed away, and I was talking to her about it, and she's like, nothing can prepare you for
nothing.
this,
Nothing.
right?
I agree.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you do recommend the prenuptial, and at the same time, nothing
Absolutely.
can prepare you for it.
Nothing.
So,
Nothing.
is there a better way? I mean, is there any way to make divorce better?
Yes. I think the first way to make divorce better is is to set us up for better relationships in general before you even have to get there. I know that sounds cliche, but we're not taught how to do relationships right. We're not taught as we go into marriages, as we go into relationships, whether it's same
Mm,
sex, whether it's, whatever. No one teaches us how to communicate. We don't learn it's, men and women, we're all different. So if we were set up to be successful in our relationships, the divorce rate would go down.
mm,
I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the knowledge or the wherewithal to understand how to do it right the first time, right? Oh, I can do it right this time. I mean, next time, if I ever do it again, I'm going to know what I did. You know what I'm saying? Hold myself accountable for what I did in my relationship that was wrong and learn how to do it right. But why
mhm,
not fix it before it's broken? Does that make sense?
mhm,
So, I really believe in premarital counseling. I
mm,
believe that when you get engaged, you should go and you should sit with me or a counselor or a therapist and actually learn how to communicate, what your attachment styles are, what your love languages are, how you disagree and fight, and because everyone fights. It doesn't matter. I mean, every couple is going to fight. It's how you make up. It's how you resolve conflict. Those are the bigger issues. That's where the divorce comes from. When you have an issue with your spouse, how you resolve it. So let's do that work before we even get to the divorce, right? Because when you
mhm,
get to that place where you're like, I'm throwing in the towel and saying, I'm done, It's too late.
Mm.
It's already, I'm a huge advocate for, just like a prenup, let's do therapy before we get to that point, right? And I mean, prenups are huge, but also you can also do a marital nuptial, like while you're married, you can talk about things because things change during the marriage. So if you're going along in your marriage, and you're married for 7 years and things get rough or rocky, instead of saying, we're done, throw up our hands, we're done. How about you say, let's work on this.
Mm.
Let's
Mhm.
choose to work on, let's choose to be happy. Let's choose to wake up in the morning and choose each other.
Mm.
Now, again, caveat, I'm not saying, look, he's abusive, she's addicted to whatever. I mean, come on. And, but I am saying, you're fighting because of X, Y, or Z, or, the garage door goes up at the end of the day and your heart doesn't flutter. Is that a reason to leave the relationship? I don't know. I think you should give it a little think.
Yeah, there's always special cases, right? In the case of, something like physical or emotional abuse. But what I'm hearing from you is the benefits of premarital counseling, prenups, and really working on your relationship
Yeah.
to make it better.
It's hard. They're hard. But also like expectations, right? So
Mm.
expectations in the first
Mhm.
place, like knowing that I'm much older than you, but when I was getting married and looking and dating, I just thought it was going to be easy. I really did. Like my mom was like, "Oh, you get your MRS degree, you get, you find the guy, you get married, you go to the white," and I just thought, "Oh, we'll work it out. Everything will just, my expectations were like white picket fence, rainbows, unicorns, sunshine." No, like sit down with these kids, younger or whatever, in their 20s, because nowadays a starter marriage are kids that get married between 21 and 27. Those kids are the highest. The divorce rate is the highest
Mm.
between that age group because they're called starter marriages, because they have these expectations of like rainbows and lollipops. But if you knew going in that it was going to be work and that you were going to fight and argue and it was going to be, an uphill, come on, then maybe you would have a better shot,
Mm. Mhm.
I think.
So before we get into all the shoulda, woulda, couldas of like how you might have saved your marriage or how
Yeah.
other people can save their marriage from not going
Yeah.
on the path of divorce, I wouldn't mind backing up a little bit because
Sure.
one way of not getting divorced is not getting married.
Oh, I'm with you.
Or
You know
what
what?
I
I'm
mean
with
by
you.
that is not jumping headfirst into it,
Oh,
but
please. I
making.
love you. Say it again. Say it louder for those in the back. Just wait. Yeah. I mean,
So, around a not jumping into it or be making sure you're with the right person, right?
yes.
So, how does that come into play in terms of making sure that like is it the wrong person that we're with? That's why we're getting divorced. We should have seen it, 5 years ago.
It depends on your age, but there's a biological anthropologist. Her name is Helen Fisher, who I'm obsessed with.
Mm,
I love her. And she does a lot of work with this whole slow love theory, where people who wait longer, who take love more seriously, who invest longer in the relationships, that they last longer in love, right? Um,
mm,
I mean, it makes sense, but she talks about a starter marriage, which I just spoke about too. And you either grow with your partner or you either grow together, with your partner, or you grow apart.
mm,
And when you're young, and when I say young, I mean in your 20s, your amygdala, you know, your frontal cortex, all that stuff is not even developed yet. So you literally are growing. Your brain is growing. You're growing at different rates, right? So like
mm,
you have to have these conversations. You have to talk about like, I mean, everything you're doing has to align. Or, like let's say you're with your partner and, she wants to go one way and you want to go the other way. And you either do it together or you don't. Like it's really just, it's not so much about picking the wrong person, I don't think, at that age, but I do think you need to. I was really quick. Like I got engaged in 6 months, married 6 months later. I didn't even know him. Like
okay.
I really didn't.
Yeah.
Like I just thought, oh, he's perfect. I was looking for the perfect sperm. Tell people the perfect sperm. He was a perfect sperm. I knew he'd be a great dad. I knew he'd be a great, provider. So depending on where you are in your life, but was he a great husband? I didn't know. How would I know? I wasn't married to him. And I was the same way. He knew I'd be a great mom. He knew that I'd
Mm,
be a great, whatever. But like, he was a really like shitty husband and I was a really crappy wife. Like we just didn't know how to be partners. But he was a great dad and I was a great mom. So it's just, you have to really concentrate on your relationship, the two of you. And when the kids come into play is a whole different song and dance. But I'm not really answering your question. I'm kind of going around it. I didn't mean to get sidetracked.
No, I love how you answered it. I love how you said that people who wait longer, take love more seriously, and invest longer end up lasting longer.
And that's the millennials. It's actually the millennials. The people are like, oh, well, they're all over the place and they're so tech savvy. But really, millennials are smarter. They're actually the age group that like are smarter because they are taking, people are like, they date all around and they're flitty and blah, blah. No, they're just dating longer because they're taking love actually more seriously because they're investing more time in finding the right partner. So people, my clients that come to me and they're 30 and they're like, oh my God, I'm 30 years old. My clock is ticking. I'm like, no, slow down. You're good. Like I tell my boys who are in their 20s, young 20s, I don't want you to think about a partner until you're 35 or 40. I mean, no, because you have time. You have so much time. These girls are coming in. They're like, I'm my baby. I want a baby now. I'm like, freeze your eggs. Just slow down, take a breath. You have time because you're changing and evolving and growing between 21 and 27. You're a different person when you're 21 from when you're 27. I mean, you're a totally different person. So you want to make sure that you find someone that, either at the same point as you or like because you are going to grow apart because you're going to be doing different things. So,
So I'm almost wondering if you think that there's a nice little sweet spot or a nice little range. What I'm hearing from people, hearing from you, 21 is a little too young. You
I
got
think it's a little
engaged at
young.
6 months, married at 12 months, basically.
And I was 26, 27.
Okay, then that was maybe
Yeah.
too quick. But I also know that you found the dating world at like your age also ends up being a bit more challenging. So do you find like, there's a recommended range around the good age to get married and also the length of your relationship?
People say everyone's different because it's based on your maturity level and it's based on blah, blah, blah. I really do think, men, I'm sorry guys to say this, but I think men need to be in their 35 and up range. I just think it's a good starting point. And I do. I just think I think under 30 is too young. I think it's too young. All the moms are like, just stop it right now. I want my son married off. Stop it right now. I just think it's too young. I think your chances, we're living longer. Knock on wood, everyone's living longer. I mean, give yourself a fair shot. If you're getting married before 30, before 35, you got a long life to live with this person. Your chances of getting divorced are obviously greater. Okay. So I'm sorry to say, like, let's do the math, right? I mean, your odds are going to be better if you get married later. It's kind of an obvious whatever, right? So, and nowadays with the way that medicine is, women can freeze their eggs. Yes, it's expensive. I get it. People say, oh, it's so, but if you really want to wait and make the choice of a good, don't settle, girls. Don't settle because you want to get pregnant. Don't settle because you feel rushed. That's what I did. I mean, I did. I was like, I want babies. I have to be pregnant before I'm 30. My uterus is this, my blah, blah, blah. I had time. I woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? Can't go back. I have beautiful children. I'm happy. I'm thrilled. I love them with, all my heart. But I mean, I think it was too soon. I think that had I waited, maybe things would have been different. But, you can't go back.
Right.
Hakuna Matata.
So it's so interesting hearing that you chose your partner because you thought they would be a really good husband. They chose you because they thought you'd be a really good wife.
Yep.
Or mom, mom and father. But you were crappy partners.
Awful. The worst. The worst. He'll tell you we were awful. And I know exactly what I did wrong too. I mean, I want to shake. Like, I'm old. I'm 50, right? I want to sit down everyone that's not married yet, all these little 30-year-olds, and shake you and be like, I'm going to tell you right now, if you act like this, you're going to be me in 25 years. Like, I want to shake you and be like, it's your tone. It's the way you speak to each other. You got to, and people lose their mind when I say this, you have to put your kids second. I grew up in the generation where you have to put your kids first. Everyone's put your kids first. Your kids come first. Put your kids first. Listen to me carefully. If you put your kids first, you will be divorced. You will be divorced if you put your kids first in your relationship. Your relationship has to come first if you want to stay married. You have to nurture the relationship between you and your spouse if you want to stay married.
Mm.
Period. End of story. The minute my children came out of my vagina, I looked at my husband and I said, "You're number two. These boys are number one,
Just
and
looked
Mark,
at
you're
him
number
right in
two."
the eye.
Right
Soon
now,
as
I
the
said, "Guess
baby
what?"
came out.
I did. The baby shot out, and I said, "Look at me, honey. You are now number two, and this baby's number one." And guess what? That was the demise of our relationship, like literally, because if you don't, and the thing is, too, you have to remember, your kids are going to be happier if you're happier with your spouse. If your relationship is better with your spouse, your kids are going to be happier, healthier children, because they're going to see what a loving, caring relationship looks like. They're going to model that behavior, and you're going to be happy. You're going to be having sex, the dopamine, the oxytocin. You're going to be in love with your husband or your wife, and your kids are going to be happy. But if you pull away from your spouse to put all of your energy into your children, you will become a bitch.
Oh,
And I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's what happens. You put your kids first, and literally, your husband starts resenting you. You start resenting him because he doesn't help with the kids and he doesn't do the laundry or he doesn't whatever. I'm being real sexist. I'm trying not to, but like, you know what I'm saying? Or vice versa. You're at work all day and you come home and he's like, hasn't made the dinner, whatever it is.
mm-hmm.
You have to, I mean, you guys, I thought it was the best. When I public speak around the country, I did this whole spiel and people are like, oh my God, I thought it was the best wife ever. The best. I would plan date nights every Saturday night. We would go out on our date nights. I would get a babysitter. We get all dressed up. And what do you think we did on the date nights?
I don't know.
What do you think we did?
Talked about the kids?
That's exactly right, Zach. We talked about the kids the whole time. We talked about the kids. We talked about our finances. We talked about his job. We never, ever talked about anything like about us or about what we were doing or what was important to him or what was important to me or what made my life. Never. It was always about the kids. So when I work with couples, I tell them you're not allowed on your date night. No kid talk, no talk about, and also I say to my couples, you have to have sex before you go on your date. Before you go out for dinner, you have to have sex before you go. Am I allowed to talk about this?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
We've had some sexy episodes, so yeah.
Oh, good. I like sexy episodes. Because if you don't have sex before when you get home, right? I used to fake diarrhea. I used to be like, I can't have sex. I'm having diarrhea. My head is, I'm kidding.
Well, maybe not that
whatever.
explicit. No, I'm just joking.
Oh, no. Okay. I used to be like, my head is killing me. Like I'm too full from dinner. I'm blah, blah, blah. But like, you can't make excuses. You have to keep your intimacy. It has to. I could go on for days, Zach. I could go on for days. But I would still be married if I knew all these things. I'm like.
No, I'd love to talk more about that, about what you think can help people save their marriages. So a huge thing I'm hearing from you right now is just communication, right?
Yes.
Earlier you mentioned how you speak and your tone. It's funny because usually date night is a common recommendation for people to save their marriage is to never stop dating their partner. But what I'm hearing from you is not necessarily that you were having a date night, but how you were having it.
Yes. And actually, I believe in scheduling sex too.
Mm-hmm.
People think I'm nuts, but a lot of you can talk to a sexologist and they'll go either way on this. But as you get deeper into your relationship and further along and older, and you have kids, it's hard. It's hard to find time to be intimate. And I'm a big fan of like every Friday night or once a week, and when it's coming, no pun intended, and you you have your date set up, and that way there's no pressure. The pressure's off the rest of the week, right? But on that Friday night that you're having sex and that's it. And so, you get ready and she gets ready and it's going to be whatever. And you leave little notes around the house. I don't care what you do, but it's anticipation. Anticipation is sexy. That's hot. And you meet up on Friday night and that, you lock the door and the kids are asleep and blah, blah, blah. And that's your night together. And, those kind of things help a relationship. They really do. It's like, it's kind of like foreplay, but it's coming. So I don't know.
Well, remember something that I read, that you have a secret recipe for everlasting
You read
marriages.
my books. You actually did read your books. That's so nice.
So you got to tell our listeners, what's the secret spice?
Oh my God, do I remember them? It's been so long since I've read my own books. What was it?
Sex, silence, and smile.
I was going to say sex, silence, and smile, but I hit the sex and silence. Oh, silence. Yeah. So talking less and what was it? Speaking more, talking less, something like that. Oh yeah. Just listening. So, my clients always come to me and they're like, he never listens to me. He never listens to me. And the men are always like, all she does is nag. All she does is nag, or, like all the time. She's relentless. She doesn't stop. I can't take it anymore. So he shuts down and she keeps talking. I mean, it's a typical dynamic of blah, 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 and D. But here's the thing. Is the sock on the floor, just asking the women, is the sock on the floor really that important? Because that sock that he left on the floor could be the end of your marriage. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it's that important, it never is really the sock on the floor. You understand? It's never really, the problem is never really the sock on the floor. It's bigger than that, right? For women, it's bigger. It's because he always leaves, it's a respect thing. He always leaves the sock on the floor. He never picks it up. I know it's because it blah, blah. But really, if the sock is that important, pick it up and put it away. Don't make it just about the sock on the floor. But if it's a bigger issue.
But I've put that sock away 5 times this week. No,
right. Exactly. Do you understand? That's what it is. I can't believe, how come you never listen to me? I've told you 75 times not to put the glass on the top, rack of the dishwasher, right? I mean, happens. But the truth is that it's the way you approach it, right? It's the way you say to him. If you go to him and you are nagging and you're bitchy and you're emasculating, it ain't going to work. But if you say, look, I've asked you blah, 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 and do you mind? And it's just about being kind and about being respectful and about understanding each other's time and space. And no one likes to feel emasculated. Women too, men, no one likes to be talked down to. It's about your tone, right? I mean, we know these things, but in the heat of the moment, sometimes we get a little nasty, but we have to kind of check ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So talking less and listening more.
Yeah. And guys have to listen. Guys, you got to tell people to zoop in their ears. Like, you have to listen. Yes, women need to maybe find the right time to approach subjects. Like when your husband walks in the door from the end of a long day, or when you see him busy with a project, bombarding him with an issue is not the best time, right? To talk about an issue. Setting a date, maybe sending him a text saying, hey, honey, I have something important I'd like to speak to you about. What time is good for you? Do you think we could talk tonight over wine? Or what about, yes, some things come up and they're quick things and you have to talk immediately, but it's best if you both have a time that's good for you to speak. It works a lot. It's a lot better. I'm also a big fan of doing check-ins. So check-ins before you go to bed, let's talk about one thing that was great about today, one thing that wasn't so great about today, but giving yourself space, allowing the space to be heard and allowing the space to speak.
So something we haven't quite tackled yet, something you said earlier around really trying your best to stay married, right? And the topic for today is staying married or getting happily divorced, right?
Okay.
And then we can put,
should I stay or should I go?
Exactly. Because I wouldn't mind getting into, when do we want to stay married and when do we want to get divorced? And, how much effort should we expect to have to put into our marriages?
Oh, that's a tough one, Zach. That's a tough one. I mean, I think it's different for every couple, right? Some experts will say that it takes both people to put the work in. And then some experts say that as long as one person is still in it, that there's hope. I'm not that expert. I think it takes both of you. I think if one person is saying they're done, it's really hard to get it back. I think you both have to choose to want to be in it. I don't think there's a time. I don't think there's a timeline for are you asking specifically how you know when it's time? I think you just know. I think you just, I will tell you this. Most people, it takes way longer than you anticipate that it takes for them to decide to leave. Does that make sense? I was thinking about it for 3 years before I pulled the trigger. Right? Because there's so much, you vacillate. There's so many decisions, financial, my kids were my biggest factor. Some people are okay, well, I'm going to wait till the kids go to college. That's a huge one. When the kids go to college, it'll be better for them. It'll be better. We'll make it through college. As long as we can make it till they get to college, we'll be fine. And people, Mark and I spoke about that. We'll be fine till they go to college, but you know what? Are you fine? Is it going to be fine? Is it better for the kids if you're fighting all the time in the house? No, it's not. It's not better, for them. Although for my kids, we didn't fight. Mark and I would fight outside on the front porch, and the neighbors were like probably wondering what was going on. But for my kids, they were shocked. At 9 and 11, they were really shocked because they never saw us fight. So that was even harder on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did I answer your question? Kind of not.
Yeah, no, you absolutely did. And much earlier, you mentioned how the grass is not greener on the other side.
But it gets greener. It gets greener. Does that make sense? Like it's not greener because it's not the green you think it is. Let's put it that way. It's not like swinging from the rafters and having sex all the time and going like that's what my married friends thought. They thought that I was like, first of all, I wasn't allowed to talk to a lot of them because their husbands thought it was contagious. Like divorce is contagious. A lot of people think divorce is contagious. Let me tell you, it's not. I don't cause divorces. You don't cause divorces when you get divorced, which is so bizarre because a lot of married people think that if you hang out with divorced people, that all of a sudden you will be divorced. Newsflash, it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's like, but it's crazy. Like it's people actually think that like by being around, I don't know what it is. It's just bizarre, but I lost so many friends who were like, just didn't even know how to handle it. Like didn't know what to say, didn't know how to act. Some people don't know which side to choose, Team Jen, Team Mark. Well, we were good friends. They didn't have to choose. We thought we made it easy,
Mm-hmm.
but clearly we
Mm-hmm.
didn't. My kids lost their friends. That was the most shocking out of everything. Like I never thought my kids' friendships would be affected like they were. They weren't invited to like, big group things anymore because I guess it was uncomfortable to have the divorced kid there. I never will really wrap my head around it, but to this day, it was the hardest hit that we took. Was that like my kids were left out of things. I still get emotional thinking about it. It's like really hard. Their friendships changed and it wasn't their fault. Like I remember calling one of my girlfriends and saying, look, I get it. All the boys are going on a ski trip together, like the group, the 10 of them, and mine wasn't invited. And I'm like, I understand, but like, I can pay for Jonah. Like, I'll pay for him to go if you don't mind. Like, can he, well, all the dads are going. And I was like, well, he still has a dad. Like Jonah's dad is not gone. Well, it was uncomfortable for the other dads because they were all married. They don't want the divorced dad there. Well, I mean, like so shocking to me, really, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's such an important insight that life on the other side is not what people think it will be. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think a lot of people might feel like inhibited in their marriage, like it's like a cage that they're in, and they've perhaps romanticized their earlier life before marriage about how free they were.
I did.
And they think that, like, oh man, once I get that divorce, I'm going to have multiple partners and be free and not have these boundaries around me. But there's an extraordinary number of challenges. You're not in your 20s anymore. So tell our listeners a little bit more about that. It's not what that life is like on the other side.
Well, it's interesting. I thought all of that. I really did. I thought I'm in like a kind of borderline sexless marriage. Mark and I were kind of like over it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get divorced and immediately I'm going to have date after date. And because you can, it's very simple. I mean, like, and I was an absolute mess. I was an absolute mess. And I wasn't ready to date, but I thought I was, and I wouldn't listen to anybody because, like I said, you don't know till you know. And I did. I got right back out there and I started dating, and I dated like person after person of disaster, narcissist, horrible. I had relationships that were frightening to me because I had no self-confidence. I had no self-worth. I didn't know I was as damaged as I was because I thought I was healthy coming out of this divorce. I thought, oh, well, I wanted this divorce. I'm fine. But you don't have perspective on, because you've never been divorced before, right? So you have no perspective. It is so not what I anticipated or thought for 1 second. We were nesting. So I don't know if you're familiar with nesting, but my kids stayed in our house and Mark and I got an apartment and we moved in and out. So my kids didn't have to. Everything was just so surreal. It was just like, but now, just jump ahead, it does get better. Like, I don't want everyone to think like, oh, I'm never getting divorced because it does eventually, like there is a light at the end of the tunnel, right? It takes work. It takes a long time. It takes therapy. It takes listening, having people, a support system. You can't do it alone. You're in the worst time of your life, the most emotionally, like, I can't even, like, the worst point in your life, you have to make long-term financial decisions. You have to worry about your children. You have to get yourself out of like this dark, dark place and live while you're going through the worst point of your life. It's like, so when my friends were like, oh, Jen's single, she's having the best time. She gets to live alone. She gets her kids week on, week off. Can you imagine having all that alone time? I was like, wait, I don't see my kids for half of their life. Okay. So like, I don't choose this alone time. It's much different when you get to choose your alone time. Like, oh, I get to go on a girls trip. Then when the judge says to you or your attorney says to you, you're losing your kids for 50% of their life. Okay. Like you think to yourself, oh, 225, week on, week off. And I was like, oh, this will be great. I'll get to watch my Netflix and chill. Yeah. I'm alone 50% of my life in my house by myself. And my babies are celebrating X, Y, or Z with their dad. And I'm lucky because my ex and I are friends. But when you're in a high conflict divorce or you're in I just can't even, it's hard. It's really hard. I think people need to understand how hard it is. But yes, if you need to do it, and yes, you choose to do it, you will be okay. You will be okay. I mean, you will eventually, but you can't do it alone. I thought I could.
Yeah, it was so interesting to me when you mentioned that after the divorce, you dated person after person. That was quite frightening. And that's another thing I've been thinking about listening to you about the grass not being necessarily greener or life is not necessarily what you think it is basically how we all have conscious and unconscious relationship patterns that shape the relationship that we are in. So often people think that if they switch out their partner, if they were with somebody else, that all the relationship problems will be solved. And many people, and it usually happens before the marriage, but usually, people enter into the same relationship again and again, and they're like, I wonder what the singular factor here is in all these relationships. People have unconscious patterns that attract them to like narcissists or something like that.
Yep.
So I feel like that is a bit more of an argument towards doing the necessary work, right?
Absolutely. I should have done it before I got married.
The emotional work.
Yeah. I think I got married too soon. I think I didn't realize I needed to do the work because I wasn't mature enough to admit it. But then when I held myself accountable for the mistakes I made in my marriage, and so did my husband. And we both sat down because we went to therapy, but it didn't work because neither of us, we were both like, we're done. But looking back, I mean, I can absolutely tell you 100% that I needed so much work. And after I did it, I'm like a different person. Like, and I know, I mean, holding yourself accountable for the mistakes you made and this, owning your shit. Oh my God. It's so good for you. It's such an enlightening. I mean, I'm like, I know. I remember calling Mark and saying, oh my God, Mark, I am so sorry. Like I was an emasculating bitch. Like what? I'm like, I am so sorry. It's my fault. He's like, Jennifer, no. He's like, we were both awful. We didn't put ourselves first. We didn't take care of each other. We did not do what we were supposed to do with our relationship. And I was like, what do you say at that point? But we were like, he's like, let's move on. Let's be friends. Let's do this right. Let's take care of our children. And it's ironic that now we put our kids first and it's okay. I tell people during a marriage, you need to put your kids second, but during the divorce, your kids come first. So
owning your shit
depressing,
is so
Zach.
good
This
for
is
you.
so depressing.
No, it's not depressing at all.
I hope not.
It's real.
Yeah, it is real.
People, you use the term rainbows and lollipops earlier, that people have this romanticized idea of what marriages take and the work that is necessary. But we're all human. We're all imperfect. We all have our own stuff. And to me, it's not depressing when I'm hearing from you. It's more just like hopeful that relationships and marriages that almost seem like they're on the way out are still wonderful opportunities to learn, to grow.
Yes.
People used to stay married out of obligation or legality, right? Like when you were a woman and you couldn't open a bank account without your husband's name, like you would just stay in.
Right.
And but now the survival of the family, the survival of the marriage depends on the quality of the partnership. So what I'm hearing, is that how important it is to work with each other, support each other, love each other for the sake of the family and the kids.
And I think also loving yourself, right? I mean, I think you talk a lot about that too. And I watch your yoga practice and everything. I'm so jealous. I got to get back into it. But, loving who you are and being able to owning your shit. Yeah. But also knowing that you're important enough to either stay and love your partner and yourself and know that together, you can fix it, or leaving and loving yourself enough to know that you need to wait until you heal before you jump into, destructive relationship after relationship. My clients always say to me, well, when's the best time to date, Jen? When should I start dating? And I'm like, no, there is no best time. The best time is when you are ready and healed, and you're never going to be the perfect version of yourself, right? You're always going to be growing and evolving and changing. And I think that's what's important. I'm never going to be perfect. I hope I'm never perfect. I hope I can always grow and evolve and change, right? And learn. But you have to be able to sit in your space and be comfortable with being alone. And I think a lot of, especially my female clients, they are not. I was not okay with being alone. I thought I was. That's another real eye-opening thing about divorce is I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to be fine. I'm fine alone. I'm totally good alone. I was not okay alone. So it's interesting to me, things you figure out woulda, coulda, shoulda. So.
Well, I appreciate so much hearing about your lived experience and just repeating what you said. You need to heal before you get into destructive relationship after relationship. So I feel like it's a really just lovely segue into my last and final question that I love to ask all of my guests, which is quite simply, what do you wish everyone knew about love?
Oh, that's such a good one. I'm getting emotional. I think that people are capable of loving more than one person at different points in their life, and that's okay. I think that people get stuck on the fact that they, that there's a soulmate and that you only have one person, and that once you find that one person, you're done. And that I don't believe that. I believe that there are different people for different times in your life. And I love big, and it's okay to love big and then love big again and then love big again. And love grows and changes just like everything else. So I think that that's really important to know, that it's not so much about finding the right partner. Yes, is important, but I think that being the right partner is just as important when you find that partner. Does that make sense?
I love it.
Did I answer your question?
You can love big again and again and again.
And again and again. Yeah, you can love big again. I love big. I love big. So, thank you for having me, Zach.
So it's so interesting. I think we said this during the show. I don't know if I mentioned it before we started recording, but you mentioned you're in a 5-year relationship. So I have to ask, is there a marriage there in that future?
No.
Are you done with?
No. Also, I don't blend families. That's a whole other podcast. My kids have never met his kids in 5 years. So yeah. So no, there'll be no marriage. I love him. I love big. I love big, but I don't love him that much. I do. I love him. I just don't. I think I'm good. I think I'm good. I think I'm happy being alone-ish. Alone-ish.
You're not alone.
I'm not alone. I'm good.
You're independent, not alone.
I'm independent. I am. I'm happy. It's good.
Wonderful.
Finally.
So thank you so much, Jennifer Hurvitz, for coming on to the show, author of Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, a divorce coach's guide to staying married, as well as One Happy Divorce. And for our listeners that want to learn more about you, how can they find you?
It's real easy. JenniferHurvitz.com.
Wonderful. That's HURVITZ, and that'll be in the show notes as well. So thank you so much, Jennifer Hurvitz, for coming onto the show, for giving us your very real experience. You clearly walk the walk and are sharing your wisdom that you found with others to help others come up with that big decision whether or not to stay married or get happily divorced. There are pros and cons to each of them, and I appreciate you sharing all your insight and wisdom with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to the Learn to Love podcast. To learn more about the show and your host, head over to zachbeach.com or theheartcenter.com. You can also follow Zach on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.